It's the Fresh and Friends podcast, and there's a great show coming right up.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Fresh and Friends podcast. I'm joined here by Titan, William Davey.
Hello.
Head coach of Gaming Gladiators, currently. We are actually recording this from an airport lounge. We're both sat in Krakow Airport in the lounge, having both attended Fabian's wedding.
Yes, a very nice wedding, indeed.
Which was crazy, seeing Fabian get married.
Yep.
There's loads of people there from like Blast and ESL, and Doki was there as well, and Milosh.
Yeah, that was actually quite a surprise thing, all like the faces that you see normally at like events, and then just like in a completely different setting that you'd never imagine, really.
Yeah. I even see Doki in a three-piece suit is weird. And then like, there's like player managers there that were like, normally they're just in like black jeans, black t-shirt, because they're in the background.
Yeah.
And they're all in like the
Dressed
dresses
up and everything. Yeah.
It was good. It was fun. It was a Polish, Swedish, English wedding.
Yes, a mixture of everything.
With lots of translations.
Yes.
And lots of languages. But yeah, it was a great time. And obviously we're in Krakow Airport. So I decided that we should still film content, or I should still film content, and get some of these podcasts done whilst I'm here. Obviously, people were very, very drunk. The idea was to get a lot of people in on these podcasts, but we ended up doing it the day after the wedding.
Yes.
And in fairness, I can't really hijack Fabian's wedding and be like, hey, come do some content. So anyway, the topic of this podcast is going to be Six Invitational, because obviously I recorded a lot at the Six Invitational whilst I was there with people that were there.
Yep.
But now it's all said and done, I guess floor's open. I presume you watched Six Invitational?
Yeah, most of it, yeah.
So what did you think?
It was very good tournament, actually. Quite a few upsets I think people didn't expect. And then I think just the general gameplay showed that as a global kind of game now, that we're really like elevating ourselves to a higher standard, including sort of like the APAC teams. Everybody's able to sort of like contest with each other more or less.
Yeah.
There are still some absolute sort of flops here or there. Cough, cough, scars, cough, cough, secret. But, you know, in general, everybody else was pretty competitive, to be honest.
So you said APAC team, technically your region, given it's the one that you're operating in.
Yeah.
By the way, guys, we'll be doing a separate episode on Gaming Gladiators to come, so we're not going to touch too much on Gaming Gladiators not qualifying and the core of that team and the year.
Yeah.
But obviously you guys didn't attend. From APAC was Scars,
Yep.
CAG,
Yep.
Team Joel,
Yep.
PSG Talon.
Yes.
Ultimately, I think quite an unsuccessful event for APAC, given only one team even made it out of groups, being Cyclops.
Yeah.
How do you assess, I suppose, those teams, because they're the teams that you're probably closer to on a day-to-day basis?
So CAG, to be honest, was a bit of a surprise.
Because they were in the group of death as well, right?
They were in the group of death, but also we saw their rise kind of when we played them in the APAC Cup in Japan.
Yep.
And one of the big things that we noticed with them was just how much they'd actually try to like learn more with their theory and stuff like that. So they'd actually like elevated their game knowledge considerably. Teams though, like Team Joel was quite a big disappointment, but I think there was a lot of sort of uncertainty with what was going to happen with that roster. And I still think there is a fair bit of uncertainty right now in the transfer window. Stars, ever since Copenhagen, just haven't seemed to hit the same heights. They just seem to have almost like topped out of what they can perform.
Are those guys better in scrims? Because I'm presuming you scrim.
We do scrim them occasionally. We don't scrim too many APAC teams because of the ping issue, which hopefully will get fixed soon. But generally, no. We scrim them maybe like once every couple of weeks or so.
Yeah.
But they're better in scrims, but not for the sake of, in terms of a team that's great at theory and stuff like that.
Okay.
It's more a case of they'll start losing rounds and then they'll just get more aggressive at you. And they try to do that on a game day, but then you can tell that on game day they're just not as confident, they're a lot more scared, so they just kind of go into a shell.
It is one thing that I literally have always said about Scars, and I said it on, I think, one of the previous podcast episodes, is that like, genuinely, the way I look at some APAC teams is like, put their front fraggers up against the front line of other teams, and it just doesn't match up.
No.
Like, even when they get more confident, it's like, well, Nina and Rek are not going to be able to 2v5 every round by getting confident. So.
Yeah.
And then the last team, PSG Talon, a team that I guess we know pretty well.
Impressive considering their build-up, I think, with obviously the idea of players wanting to retire, plus other sort of players like having falling out with each other. I think there was as well. Uncertainty, there was trialing at a certain period as well. And when we scrimmed them a couple of times, they looked really, really rough. So whatever they did in that sort of like 2 weeks prior to the event or so, they really sort of got their heads sort of gripped around it. And I think once they lost those first couple games, they kind of like really came into their own. I mean, I think they beat BDS and Dark Zero, was it, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like
After being 0-2 against Falcons and
Raza Company.
Raza. I want to say lost them, but yeah, Raza Company.
Yeah. And it does show, I think, that PSG team does definitely have potential and talent, and they were very good at sort of using the meta in a sense. But you can still tell is one of the issues with, I think, a lot of the like Korean teams, Japanese teams. It's like when the pressure starts getting mounted on them.
Yeah.
Even if they are looking good in the game, it will start to sort of like regress in terms of their performance.
Yeah, fair. Okay, so we've gone from the region that you work in. Let's go to the region that you're from.
Yep.
Well, technically. Live and reside inside of Europe, I guess.
Yeah.
The European teams. G2, BDS,
Yep.
VP, was that it? And
Secret.
Secret. Yeah, forgot about Secret. It was weird because on the analyst desk, we covered 2 groups each because of the way it fell. We did morning and evening shifts, and it was like alternating. So me and Alfama covered Group A, which was G2's group, and Group C, which was BDS's group.
Right.
So I didn't really even see Secret play because that was the times that I was like off/prepping my other games.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's start with Secret then. A team that you, well, not a team that you, I suppose, how many players there you used to coach? Just Savage?
Savage is the other one, yeah.
So it's not really the team that you
Not-
left, but
yeah.
the team that you was on that then became this team.
Yeah, disappointing for them. I think would be the underlying feeling and factor. Obviously, I think everybody saw the crash out, the aftermath on Twitter and social media, sadly.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a bummer. And obviously, the team making changes as it has done, significant changes. It will be interesting to see how they perform next year. But at SI, I think the big issue that everybody expected, which was, or a lot of teams sort of like privately sort of knew about, which was how would the team balance work in a sense. You've got a lot of good shooters, but how do you put them together in a team to make them work?
Yeah.
I think they came unstuck at SI where people weren't hitting shots, people weren't fragging out individually, and unless there weren't hard carries in the games. I mean, I think Joom tried to put up the best performances that he could.
Yeah.
I think he had some very good games, but again, everybody struggled. I mean, Adrian had another terrible tournament, for example. I think he was like a bottom 5 rated player at the end.
Yeah. I think the thing for Secret is the group did really undo them. Like, I think you put them in any other group, they get out of that group.
Yeah.
Because I think they're better than, if you look at who's last place in the other groups, you've got Joel, you've got PSG, you've got Scars, obviously.
No.
But like even some of the 4th place teams, Oxygen, Falcons, you know, I know and wanted, like that Group A actually ended up being a very competitive group. But
Indeed.
I will say, like, from what you're saying there is like, who are Secret going to like execute better than? Who are Secret going to be their team play better than on a Furia phase Shopify Rebellion? It's only really CAG, and it came down to that CAG game that they ended up losing because I think pressure was up and it was the very last game for them.
Indeed.
Crazy as well, because I think with the Secret changes, I guess if we do a mini Secret segment, it's like, from what I understood, and because obviously we were there at SI and, you know, speaking to people, those changes were dictated more by the organization, I think, than they were necessarily the team, i.e. being the players.
Yes, yeah, I agree with that.
I don't know how much like Twitter and the coaching staff were involved, but I think the organization as well. And obviously everybody saw the crash out. I guess we can't really
Ignore it.
We can't really ignore it. It's crazy to me because Secret, I think, had quite a good formula, but you know, good luck to them. Obviously, partner organization, they will be in Rio, and we'll see what they concoct in terms of a team going forward.
Indeed, and we'll see how they perform. We'll see if they can actually hit the same successes I think they had for most of last year, which was hitting back-to-back main stages.
Yeah.
The only blip was EWC, but they still made the final game of that for the qualifier.
I appreciate you. I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here, and I appreciate the context of this is going to be that obviously you guys didn't qualify for Montreal and SI. Do you think Secret overperformed through 2024 to get to a point that hit their expectations of 2025? Because, and the reason I say this is, coming into SI, obviously, you know, whenever I was like streaming quals or whenever I was doing the talent briefings or whatever it was, people were saying Secret a top 4 team, a top 6 team, a main stage team. And I'm sat there thinking, I like Secret, I like what they had going, but I saw there was a lot of inexperience. I know that, like, from what people say about, you know, some of the IGL and whatever, that they can have these snowball effects when it goes badly. Yeah. And I'm like, have they just overperformed where their level is? Or was that an underperformance at SI? Or both, I guess.
SI was definitely an underperformance.
Yeah.
I think their main stages was kind of, it sounds bad, but like the cap of where they could be, like the top 8 kind of. I think the reality is they're somewhere in between in terms of like what their consistency levels would be. I mean, knowing a little bit post SI, having spoken to players on that team, I realise now that, as theory suspected, it kind of made it that the team, there was a lot of fundamentals that were missing in a sense. And I think that's what a lot of people from at least the professional side of the game could recognise with the players that you picked up that they picked up in a sense.
Yeah.
Individually, yes, they can win a one. Then how do they come together? And that's where I think that obviously, they didn't overperform, they didn't underperform when they made main stage. That was kind of like, but that was like definitely the top of where I think they were ever going to hit, because once you get to those big boys, that's where the extra added bit of team play and stuff like that.
That's where you've got to be all over it, right? Yeah, fair enough. All right, I mean, we're going region by region, seemingly. We've just done 2 of them. Yep. So Brazil, I mean, obviously FaZe Clan ended up winning it.
Yep.
If we look at the amount of Brazilian teams, there were a lot. So we've obviously got Team Liquid, who 4th and then got eliminated. We can go on to the elimination. Raza Company Academy, who I think were probably the big surprise package of any team, really. I mean, CAG were a surprise, but everyone's known CAG. Whereas Raza Company Academy, like a lot of these players, it would have been a lot of viewers, especially first time seeing those players. Furia, FaZe, and W7M. So that was there any more? No. It's just those 6.
Yeah.
But 6 out of 20 is a lot.
That's a lot.
So I guess team by team, we'll go into the bracket. So a lot of the teams that were successful, probably the least successful team there, Team Liquid.
Another event, another failure. It's no surprise to see that entire team basically just got benched pretty much.
And seemingly making changes, right?
Yeah. I think they're going to restart from fresh pretty much.
I mean, obviously, I don't think anything's announced. It's kind of weird because we're going to talk about this in the context of we are in the final week of the transfer window.
Yeah.
So we actually and I think you could probably attest to this. This is probably the most fluid transfer window I think we've ever had.
Oh, absolutely.
It's crazy. Like some of the things happening in Europe, but across the world.
I mean, it's the last minute changes as well.
We've now got Brazilians going to Korea. Like we've got all sorts of imports and exports and everything and whatever. But yeah, I think Liquid do need some changes. I think, being honest, that's been plain to see for a while.
I mean, I think ever since they won, was it Sweden Major, Gavle Major, something like that? I can't remember. Jönköping Major? It was one of the Sweden Majors, I think.
No, they didn't win it. Last thing Liquid won was Atlantic City. They competed in the Jönköping Major final, lost to BDS.
Oh, did they get to the final and they lost it? So they haven't
They lost the final to BDS, sure.
Right.
They've not won one.
I mean, ever since then, they just downhill. I mean, there's not much else to say. I mean, it was blatantly obvious, I think.
It's a shame. It's like properly a shame because the storyline would be so good and people like clasp onto that like, oh, I really want Nescapalu to win a major. It's like, it's not happening.
Yeah. No.
So, all right, fine. Last region, North America. I think actually a very successful, in a way, tournament for North America in the group stage. Yep. We had M80, Unwanted, obviously previously Cloud9 BC. We had Dark Zero. We had Shopify Rebellion. And we had Oxygen Esports, who came through the LCQ and did manage to get out of groups at the expense of Scars being so shit, being honest. So general thoughts, I suppose, again, we'll go with the teams that were least successful, which I think in the bracket, therefore, is Oxygen and M80, actually. So we start with Oxygen. What did you make of Oxygen's performance/run?
An overperformance, to be honest. I didn't actually expect them to make SI. I thought they would actually have sort of some other teams potential other teams in NA that would make it, but they really sort of seemed to lock in. I mean, they had a lot of close results during stage 2, which I think was quite well. And I think they only lost scorelines by 7-5, realistically. So it was clearly a team with a lot of potential, but again, it's a similar case of Secret. It was a weird balance of players put together, I think. It was almost like, can you win your one kind of over, does this balance and fix well?
And to be fair, they've got a lot of players, like you say, that can. Like, Nuis is really good, Gomez, like, even DS has got talent. I know people, like, somewhat are not
a fan
of the playstyle, but he's got a lot of talent. Hat's talent, there's a lot of talent on that roster. So, yeah. And then, I said this on my stream, actually, as well. I don't know if you agree, but I felt like for both Raza Company Academy and Oxygen, they had fairly straightforward LCQs because all the other good teams had already qualified.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah.
Who did Oxygen have to beat? It was like Wildcard, right?
Wildcard.
So it's like that game, in my mind, from like a pure outside perspective, that's like a 50-50. They win that 50-50, they're at SI. Because everyone else they were going to beat, they was like tier 2, tier 3. Anyway, so M80. Reasonably successful group stage. Yep. There was quite a big crash out with Bodega and Vivus, who ended up taking competitive suspensions and rulings. Yep. That's all we'll pretty much say about that. And then they ultimately ended up not winning the map since that point as well, and crashing out of the playoffs and of Six Invitational in totality. And I think Again, don't know if it's 100% happening. Looks like they're going to be making some pretty significant changes. Obviously, at least in the coaching staff as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a team I think that if you look at how it's operated for the last couple of years, it's definitely been very sort of flimsy and very sort of, to put nicely, like wishy-washy in a sense. It hasn't been really sort of strong. But then when you combine that with, I think, the direction they're hoping to go in, I think it's definitely a betterment for the organisation. It's a betterment for the team in general. And fundamentally, at the end of the day, I think what you're going to find is just that's going to be a bit more of a consistent team. It will be an interesting team, though, to see when it gets announced.
There was a world where after SI last year, they were looking at making some quite significant changes.
Yeah.
And one of the coaches that they were speaking to, again, it's been a year since, I don't think I'm leaking too much here, basically said to them, you don't really have any leaders or leadership in that team. It's kind of just a collection of very, very talented individuals, but without that leadership, you're not bringing any structure, you're not bringing any longevity. And I think we saw that with M80 because they've made so many changes. Like, yes, they kind of ran through NAL, to be fair. They were good in North America. They went to both of the majors, whatever. But, like, the foundation just never seems to be there for M80.
No, I mean, it's very...
And I think maybe they finally realised that as well.
I think so. I think the incident kind of helped tip it over the edge.
That kind of pushed them.
Yeah, I think they were forced to, because I think the entire sort of belief in the hierarchy of that team was like the vision of the coaching staff, and then obviously if they're gone, then what do you do?
Yeah.
You have to start from scratch.
Okay, cool. So we've been through every region. The main stage teams for Six Invitational were BDS, Space Station Gaming, Raza Company Academy, Furia,
Unwanted,
and FaZe. Surprises? There's a couple in there in my mind.
Raza Company Academy is obviously, I think, the biggest surprise for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But then again, should it be so much of a surprise? It was E1, it basically is what that roster was.
Yeah.
They made Manchester Major, came second place in Brazil. Yes, HU, they had a bit of a flop, to be fair. But the LCQs, they look strong, and I think they're a team with a very clear identity of how they want to play. And I mean, if you look at them tactically on paper and you break them down, they are a very, very sound team. And, and they have to be, considering they don't have the superstar
They don't have
players.
the firepower and whatever.
I think Perez is like their best player, but even then, he's not one of these like absolute crazy players.
It's really interesting because I found them very, very hard to analyse from a point of view of they've not anything that you can get excited about is the best way I described it. It's like they are fundamentally a really good team, and because of that, they were beating teams. But it was like, I don't know. There's not huge names from Brazil on that team. There's like, obviously, it's a technically all-glass team because it was under Raza Company Academy. But yeah, like, they played some really good teams. They beat Shopify, they beat Virtus Pro, for example. Ego challenged VP on Bank.
Yep.
They did. Did they lose it?
I think they won it, actually. Yeah,
They did.
Yeah.
They did.
8-6, yeah. I mean, there's something that they had, which was, I think, their executability, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're challenging VP on maps like that, and the scorelines were OT every single game, I believe it was. Yeah,
It was a 43-rounder, 42-rounder, something like that.
So it's like, you can clearly see that how they want to play in a sense, and it's an identity. And I mean, genuinely, if you break down their shots, it's not exciting.
Yeah.
But it's effective. They know what they want to do. I mean, they have so many attacks that I think teams take sort of like inspiration from. And I've looked at and sort of broken down and then used for myself. And you can see that there is like so much like clear clarity behind what they want to do.
It's kind of a bit unlucky, obviously. They got through to main stage, played Furia, ended up losing.
Yeah.
And then Unwanted, I think we're on a pretty good run from that low bracket.
Yeah.
NA team in North America, momentum. And then Raza Company ended up getting eliminated. But I think actually top 6 team in the world from an LCQ spot is very, very good.
They should be very proud of themselves, to be honest.
Unwanted, curious team, that one.
Dream is the best player in the world.
Dream is the best player in the world.
That's the statement right now. Dream is the absolute GOAT.
Obviously, it was the 3/5 of Cloud9 Beast Coast Beast Coast at the time that won the Manchester Major. The 3 guys that were unwanted by M80.
Yeah.
They added in Dream and Atom.
Dream and Atom,
Yeah. Off the top of my head. It's been a couple of weeks. We were at a wedding yesterday. Yeah, not a bad team at all.
No, I think a lot of people expected to not have the same firepower, losing Gunner and Diffuser, but Dream stepped up massively, like genuinely absolutely incredibly. Gaveni still performed his own sort of...
Kid's got so much talent.
It is crazy how mechanically good he is.
Yeah.
It is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then Atom, to be honest, I think really proved himself after like a not so great time on Sonics back in stage 1, I think it was, when he was there.
Yeah.
And then this event, he performed really, really well up until obviously the losing game where he really struggled. But other than that, I think every single player on that team did themselves justice and credit, and can only be praised for what they did, to be fair.
So then we move through. So we're looking at the top 6 now. Obviously, that's the 2 teams, or not even the 2 teams, because Unwanted beat Raza Company Academy, end up losing to FaZe Clan the next day. Space Station Gaming. What do you make of them? Because I thought they had a very, very good tournament. I genuinely, especially with the way that they played that upper bracket at the start.
Yeah.
In the same day, they 2-0'd FaZe, 2-1'd G2, which I think was a hell of a day of siege for them.
That is a hard day of siege.
Yeah. And then they came close to beating BDS as well.
Yeah, they did actually. They lost the last map. They
7-1.
got smashed. Yeah.
But they nearly beat BDS on bank. A couple of rounds go differently.
Yeah. Then they 2-0 it as well.
They 2-0 BDS, including a win on bank.
SSG's a hard one. I'm obviously great friends with Benja.
Yeah.
On the team.
Yeah, from the G2 days.
Yeah, so seeing Benny lose kind of like hurts in a sense. But it's going to sound terrible now. I sound like a horrible person. I said to him before the event, if you guys get top 6 and you make main stage, you should be happy with that.
Yeah.
Because I think that team at the time, what the roster was, is where their limit is, kind of, in a sense. I think that team was that. I think they need something extra potentially in the future, just to be able to get themselves from like the top 6 moving forward towards, actually the semis and the grand final.
Sorry, it's funny. We are at the airport lounge.
Yes, people just walking
So
past.
people are walking past like, why is there a camo? Why are the microphones? It was like a pilot or something. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I really, I don't know, I've said this a few times, I'm really bought into SSG, like really bought into it. But like, you can see them getting to a point where they probably make a change.
Yeah.
Whether they do that now or not, I don't know. Again, middle of transfer window, God knows what's going on. I think the teams themselves can't keep up, never mind like people from the outside of that. So, yeah, okay, cool. Then we start getting to the big hitters. So we got FaZe Clan going through. Furia ended up with the next team eliminated, obviously, that we've not yet discussed. Furia had a solid tournament. And it's crazy because I think people slept on Furia coming into the tournament. I think people genuinely slept on them, despite the fact they were the reigning champions.
The thing with Furia is they had the same effect or same sort of thing as what we did at G2 last year, I think it was. The year.
In Brazil?
Yeah, in Brazil.
Yeah, it's the last year,
Yeah, in 24 that would have been, I think.
Because you were the reigning champions at that point, but people were not hot on the team going into it.
Correct. But you just, when you are those world champions and you know that that's your title to defend, there is this sense of pride and actually ego and confidence that you get out of it.
Yeah.
And the other team as well looks at you and then there is that extra bit of pressure added. These guys are the reigning world champions.
They know.
And the moment you start winning a few games, everybody goes, oh God.
Yeah.
Are they back? Can they do it again? And I think that's the effect in a sense that you can have. And I mean, for Furia, it got them close. I mean, can't remember the results against FaZe, but I don't think it was actually that close. I think FaZe in the end.
Yeah, so I mean, they had an unreal run from a Furia point of view. Group of Death, top tip, 3-1.
Yeah.
Only game they lost was CAG in the very first play though.
Anderson is a genius, I guess.
And they then actually go through and beat some good teams. 2-0 Dark Zero, 2-0 Raza Company Academy, get 0-2'd by BDS, 7-3, 8-6 on bank. Why are teams taking BDS to bank? Whatever. And then, 7-5, 7-2 by FaZe, who were actually, I'll be honest, at that point, the lower bracket final, FaZe were in the mood. Like, the feeling was that this is going to be FaZe's tournament.
I mean, again, it's another team, upper bracket, you drop into the lower bracket, you're just playing every single day, you win the event.
Yeah.
It's same thing with G2, same thing as Furia, now FaZe.
That's the thing is, ultimately, there's a world where, because the way SI currently works is it's a 5-day, for phase 1, it's a 5-day window where you play, every team will play 4 of those 5 days.
Yep.
So there's a world where if you play the first 4 games and you play the 10 o'clock slot on day 4 and you top your group, which I think G2 did in, not Rio, in Sao Paulo, because you played the first 4 games. I remember that last year. And if you play first, so let's say it starts on a Monday, you play Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning, you have all of Thursday off, Friday off because you don't play, Saturday off because it's a break day, Then you play the Sunday, but you're in the late slot on the Sunday. So you've gone from Thursday morning, your next game is a Sunday evening.
That's a huge.
Because you're in that first slot, you get the inferior advantage in the bracket because you are a step further. You win that. You then don't play again until Tuesday.
Yeah.
If you win that, you then don't play again until Saturday.
Yeah.
So from going every single day, you could go from Thursday to the following Saturday only playing 2 best-of-3s.
Yeah.
Which, in theory, is good because it's the shortest route to the final.
You also get to hide the most stuff, technically,
and
prepare.
You get to hide the most stuff, you get to prepare. But I'm not saying you're not match fit, to use a sports term, but the other teams coming into it, and we've seen this at every single SI now, are in such a blaze of form, and because their back's up against the wall, they're playing the best Siege they can possibly play, snowballing it.
Do you know what it is? It's the fact that when you're in that lower bracket, there is no thinking. And also, you're preparing, but it's like just going straight away to the next game, and that's the same thing as we had. It's you kind of just ignore the fact that, I can sit here and just prepare for everything, I've got my time. Because you kind of just start going, this is kind of easy, it's just laid back, nice break, Whereas in the lower bracket, it is just hell for leather, really.
And yeah, to be fair, for FaZe Clan, they played obviously the 4 group stage games, lost to SSG, then played Liquid, VP, Falcons, Space Station, Unwanted, Furia, then BDS.
Yeah.
And you look at BDS's run, they played the 4 games, then they play Unwanted, Space Station, Furia, final.
Yeah.
It's a big difference. Again, I still think if you offer it to the teams, they're going to want the thing that gets them the highest, the shortest route to the final.
Yeah.
But it's now been proven 3 events in a row that lower bracket is very, very good.
As long as you're on a run.
As long as you're on a run. FaZe Clan, I think, are a curious team because I think, from speaking to teams out there, they will let you have a lot of control in the map and everything else. I remember this was something you were saying to me, in Atlanta when we were talking about FaZe at that time. They give you a lot of things, but you've just got to be so much better than them at everything if you're going to beat them.
That's the thing. I mean, their reactions, the discipline that they have, the clear sort of just understanding of what's meant to be done in each situation and moment is so ingrained into every single player. Yeah. I mean, you can just tell that they know what they're meant to do in every single moment. And they have such a wide variety as well to be able to choose from when they want to, in terms of adaptations, not in terms of just overhauling strats. They don't need to do that, but they can adapt on the fly so well.
It's like the way that I think about these things is it's like a flow chart, right? It's like, see this, do this. Or they're doing this, we do this. But then there's the branch off it, which I presume is Vita King. Is the idea that calls that and makes those slight adaptations. But it feels like they're so well drilled in every possible scenario. It feels like a VP, but with more pace, with a more not understanding, because that's wrong to say about VP, but a current methodology.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think one of the great things that they did was when Romalio left them, they picked up Rafadel, who is a former analyst for teams. And because of that, I think he was able to sort of provide that in-depth knowledge to Vita King, who was then able to sort of take that and then make decisions and pre-plan things a lot better, which really helped that team sort of get a little bit of a step further.
Yeah.
And also, it kind of led it to being more player-led, I think, than just coaching staff-led. Mm-hmm. So the players all had to take more responsibility as well.
Yeah. And then on top of that, to be fair, some insane talent.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Cyber, Candy, KDS. I mean,
Souls.
Brilliant.
Even Vita King, who at the time when they
played
him
insane.
Yeah. So the last team, I guess, that there's 2 teams that we've not really spoke about, and I'm going to take us away from main stage for a second because we'll get onto the main stage, which will be BDS. G2, just with it being your former team, lights out, and I'm talking lights out group stage again. Have not lost a group stage game since 2023 when you was on the team.
I'm going to say something controversial now.
Go on.
I don't think they played that good in groups.
Really?
I think they played well, but I think everybody else played shit.
Okay.
Against them.
So their group was what? Joel, M8T, Unwanted.
Both played terribly.
Liquid.
Unwanted seemed to be lost, and Liquid just were terrible against them. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, they played well, but they weren't insane. I don't think they had a proper challenge.
So the crazy thing is, there's you'll remember this because obviously you was on the team in 2023 in G2. That sentiment coming in to 2023 was not hot on G2. I think the team had struggled with the majors in 2022, performance. They changed out like players in 2022 at that time that Prano was on the team, and there was all changes, and it ended up being picking up Benjo and you at the same time. But something just clicked, and there was like a feeling in Montreal 2 years ago. It felt the same, and that's the only thing that I can say is it felt the signs coming out of G2 from my perspective, because I suppose I'm in the same environment, talent speaking to the team. It felt exactly the same. I was like, G2 are winning this, but okay, you said that you don't think they played difficult opposition.
It's not that they didn't play difficult opposition. I think the opposition on the days when they played them just didn't turn up properly. I think that was.
I think we really saw that out of M80 actually thinking about it, because G2 battered M80.
I mean, this is the thing. I think,
and M80 actually had quite a strong group stage after that.
But G2 had a trump card, which I don't think M80 paid enough attention to. They had cameraman as the support staff, who, to be honest, just knew every single little detail that M80 were going to pull out.
Because I mean, one of the things here is M80 were quite a rigid team from what we heard. Fair enough. So G2 ended up getting 2-1 by Space Station Gaming.
Benny on top.
And then I think the surprise really is that they lost to Oxygen.
Yes, that was... Okay, there, G2 played terribly that game. They should have won that game still, but they still did play terribly, and they shouldn't have lost that game. I'll give them credit. I'll give them that.
And I think what's crazy is, being honest, looking through the teams that they would have had to play, with no disrespect to any of these teams, with the way that
they could have been a top
up,
4 finish.
They could have been top 4.
Yeah.
Because say they beat Oxygen on that day where they played badly.
Potentially beat Unwanted.
I mean, they beat Unwanted quite handily in groups. They could have beaten Unwanted, probably could have beaten Raza.
And then FaZe is probably
where they come up to FaZe and probably lose out on the main stage, being honest. But we're probably thinking about, and it's a G2 that, we've been at SI with Doki. I don't think it's going to be a big secret, but G2 are not making any changes. I think they understand the situation of where the team was at, where the team's going, and actually, G2 are never going to be content with top 8 or whatever the hell it ended up being, top 10, top 12. But I think they understand the realness of it could have gone further. Yeah. It probably should have gone further, but actually they didn't.
I think they realised that, based on certain things that we now obviously know behind the scenes, in a sense, that it realistically, it wasn't actually that bad of an event. And again, it's a growth process with that roster. Yeah. I think that's a big thing. But as you said, I mean, G2, I remember speaking to Maniac, the old team manager.
Luca.
Yeah, Luca. He's obviously just returned as team manager, at least for the interim period. He said to me, the company policy is very simple. Top 3 is a minimum. Yeah. The expectation, though, is you win. Yeah. And that is just the G2 philosophy.
Yeah, and regardless of where they're at, obviously there's some, I would say arguably in the world, there's probably 4 or 5 teams I would say that are better than G2 in terms of playing staff, in terms of just momentum and way they currently apply themselves in the game. But
it's G2.
That doesn't change the fact it's G2.
Exactly.
Okay, so fine. I think G2, generally my outlook on them for 2025 is actually quite positive.
Yes.
That might be more due to the rest of EU seemingly wanting to implode, but whatever. But I think G2 are going to be fine. I think we'll see them at next SI, the majors, whatever. It's G2. The last team that we've not spoke about, BDS. Now, obviously, have announced as at right now are leaving BDS. We don't know what's happening on an official standpoint. There's rumors about them going to new organizations and whatever. We'll leave that to all become public. If we just focus on them at Six Invitational, very comfortable. Won their group. They then beat Unwanted. They beat Space Station. They beat Furia. They go to the grand final, and this is the bit that I really want to focus on a little bit, because they're now 3 grand finals in a row that they've lost. They've lost both major grand finals and the Six Invitational grand final.
Won EWC though.
They won EWC. Do you think that that's a grand final curse? Do you think, and I use curse, maybe not a curse, do you think they get in their own heads in a grand final?
Oh, a little bit, I think. I think actually what it is, to be honest, they have that such an expectation of themselves to win that when they start losing, it's very hard for them. Yeah. And not just that, but also when you put them, I hate to individually name players, but I'm gonna do it. When you see Shaiko, for example, having, the only way I can put it is like a crash out or a tantrum kind of on stage. Controversial words, there we go. Come back to bite me at some point, undoubtedly.
So you're calling out Shaiko?
Yeah, basically. Sorry, mate.
That's the Twitter clip.
Yeah. You can see that will affect the rest of the team. That's just blatantly obvious, especially when it's your star man in a sense. And I think what it is, and the reason why people don't realize the difference between what's the difference between EWC, for example, and all the other sort of like blast-based events is the crowd is so small at EWC. You're in a tiny little area, having been on that main stage. Whereas on a major or an SI, you've got thousands in front of you. You feel it as well.
I think obviously, that you can say this because you've been on main stage at both, right? But obviously with the context of EWC is that it is a festival. That you've been to Riyadh Boulevard. It is a festival of, there isn't just the esports going on. There is gaming. There is everything going on around there. And the local people do take to it. They do turn up. But at the same time, they're not necessarily Siege fans. Yeah. And obviously, there's a lot of the Siege community that won't go to Saudi, which I understand all of those things going on. What it makes for in the arena is, I'll be honest, a very comfortable environment.
Yes,
I think for a LAN event, it's probably the closest you can get to online play.
Yeah, agreed.
I would say, and then you get to a major, and people have said this to me actually. I say it on my broadcast a lot. The crowd makes such a difference.
Yes, it does.
And I remember speaking to Felipox in Brazil last year, and he said there is no way we pull that comeback off if there's not so many Brazilians creating noise, creating atmosphere, just creating an environment that got us up to do that. And it makes such an event, such a difference to the players, and clearly for BDS, it makes a difference in a negative way when they hit finals. I was actually fortunate enough to be backstage and hear some of the BDS pre-match talk, and I did think, I don't know if this will ever go out, because orgs teams, they record a lot of content. It might already be out, but certainly something that struck me when I heard them, and this is me going back off memory from a couple of weeks ago, but they were talking very specifically, I want to say it was Julio, about, in their pre-match, about the pressure of losing a final. Yeah. And he was doing it from a context of, don't feel the pressure, don't think about it. But in my mind, that was crazy, because that instantly is going to make them think about it. Yeah. In my mind, it should have just been quite game focused on the specifics and keep them as cool as possible. But
indeed, I mean,
maybe it was something different they were trying from previous, maybe whatever.
Possibly. But I mean, from SI23, if I use that as the example, I mean, Fabian's pre-game talk and everything we just talked about was just just enjoy the moment. You don't need to talk about the actual grand final itself. We'll just do vetoes when it comes around. We've done all the prep work already. You're here because you deserve to be. Yeah. Take in the moment, take in the arena, just enjoy it, enjoy the experience. Whatever happens, happens. Just, you don't need to think about anything else, kind of.
Do you subscribe to, so I have a point of view that I think is quite different from a lot of people. I'm going to talk community here rather than professionals. Right. But my view of BDS was actually with the changes that they made, which were quite material changes, did we actually really expect them at the start? And I was saying this at the start. Did we expect them to win anything in the next 12 months? I saw that as a settling in period. So I saw maybe this SI is their first big one, their first big test. So in isolation, if you said to me 12 months ago when they make a change, they merge two teams that are both good teams. Obviously BDS were a good team, M&M were a good team. They merge them, they get the best of both, but also they make a material change with Leaky Fak IGL in English. And you'll know this as a bilingual, because he'll think in French and speak in English. That's difficult, first and foremost. But I was at that point in time, I was right off the majors, right off EWC, whatever they do, SI will be their first big test. So if you take out the fact that they got to every final and did so well, which you shouldn't, but if you do that, SI second place is not a bad result.
Agreed.
Add in the context that they get second place at Manchester and Montreal and win EWC.
It's not good.
It doesn't feel good. But actually, that's still a really successful year.
It's a successful year. I think the big thing, I would have agreed with you with the settling in period for BDS this year, if it wasn't for how I saw them at Malta when we played them. We were the first team to play that new BDS roster.
Yes, you was. And they won Malta. They beat you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember when we lost them in the upper bracket, we got slammed by them.
Yeah, I remember.
We repeated it in the grand final. We won the first map, remember? And I think they had a map advantage on us or something like that. And then we got basically our backsides handed to us on the next couple maps that were there. But there was that extra hunger. There's something that they basically drilled into themselves, a way to play.
Really? Okay.
And I think that was the moment where I was like, okay, this team actually is not settling. There's no settling period. They've done that.
They're just going.
They're going.
Okay.
They're hitting
Fair
the
enough.
running.
Fair enough. I suppose just as we finish this, because this is just a quick SI recap, I want to, because obviously you were previously an analyst, head coach. You've kind of been in and out of those two roles. Currently a head coach. I presume you still do a lot of analytics and that stuff yourself. With the map veto advantage, because this was quite hotly debated, at least amongst people that I was speaking to, BDS could choose any map out of the 9. And there was 2 very, very obvious choices. Will they pick Bank, that is a roster they've never lost, or will they pick Chalet, which is a phase permaban, and that BDS also like? In my mind, they had to pick Bank. They ended up picking Chalet and winning it, to be fair. It was the only map they won, and it took them a lot of rounds. They ended up playing it. It was like 9-7. Yeah, because of max OT. So with that one, where do you see that? Would you have gone Bank?
I'd have still done what they did on Chalet, but I'd have definitely tweaked how I played, because they played pretty much a similar Chalet to how they played for the whole year. And one thing is, FaZe might permaban Chalet, but one thing that I remember speaking to Romalio about is, even though these Brazilian teams have these permabans, it's not a permaban.
They still play it.
They can play it. They'll practice it maybe once or twice, like every couple of weeks. But then what they actually do is they'll just sit there and they'll hard counter you, because it's such a simple map, something like Chalet, that they will just play to hard counter you. And that's what they did to BDS.
And I think that's what makes them strong, right? Because if you look at FaZe's permabans, Chalet border, right? Whereas if you look at some other teams and just generic, if you look generically, I think across most of the tier 1 teams and most of the tier 1 leagues, your permabans are starting to be things like Skyscraper, Consulate, like Cafe, whatever, back in the day, theme park, and the more bigger technical maps that is harder to enact a counter-strat on.
Or even just do on the fly.
Oh, yeah. And this is why I didn't think Chalet was a good option, because everybody can still play Chalet. Fundamentally, is a map that is an L shape.
Yeah.
And once you understand that, you can still play it to a level. You might not be the kings of Chalet. Because I do think that probably rocked BDS.
No, it did. I mean,
and overtime, a 9-7, the way that they went to overtime with the troll against Cyber, like...
I mean, the one that we won, I keep referring back to that, for example. But
2023.
Yeah. We played Clubhouse against W7M. They had any choice of map, and they chose Clubhouse instead of Border, I think it was, to play against us. We expected that
Which
they
at
would.
the time, Clubhouse was your permaban.
Correct, yeah.
They loved Clubhouse.
We did as much counter prep as we could, so we had makeshift strats here and there. We took
Yeah, because you've been on the other side of this thinking about it,
We lost 7-5, but we knew that as long as it wasn't a stomping or
gave you confidence,
it would scare the crap out of them. And it went down to a 1v1 on a bar stock defense that they threw out. And it was like, they came off stage. I remember Carl coming to me backstage and he just looked at me and just went, Volps is white. They're just shaking. They are so fucking nervous. They know they've lost this grand final already because they've just picked our permaban after that, basically.
Yeah.
They know that they have nothing on us.
And that's the thing, is like, FaZe will have got that same energy.
Yeah.
And they know that, BDS might have taken the map. They might be 1-0 up in the series, but it's 9-7.
Yeah.
Like,
you don't
played
feel confident.
16 rounds. They're, barely separated. And it's FaZe's permaban. It's BDS is one of their best maps. I mean, I would say there's 3 for BDS.
Their reaction when they won was not that of let's go, well done.
It's like, whew,
thank God. Almost,
Yeah. So, again, in hindsight, I feel quite vindicated because I was quite vocal that they should be going Bank. I know FaZe play Bank. I know it's good. But I think if a result like that happens, that's a 9-7, or they end up losing it, they can handle losing Bank to a team that's good at Bank. They couldn't handle going close or losing Chalet against FaZe. It was just such a big gamble.
No, indeed.
That being said, a couple of rounds go differently, and this is the same thing for BDS in actually all of the major grand finals and the SI grand final. They lose Consulate Night Even Labs 7-5, 7-5. Then they lose 7-4 on Clubhouse. They had to try and mount a bit of a comeback, whatever. Yeah. Crazy. Honestly, like, a couple of rounds go differently. You're talking about BDS that at least gets to a map 5, maybe even wins it.
Yeah.
So I think, successful year, if I'm being honest. I don't feel too bad for BDS.
No, I mean, if you look at it, if you could promise a team a grand final appearance in every single event of the year, I think everybody takes that, hands down. Every organization, every roster, because it's like, at least you're getting there.
Yeah.
Now you tell them that you've got lots of second places. Okay, maybe the heartbreak will get to them a bit, but and that's the one thing that I'm curious about with BDS is that many second places. Is it going to fuel them this year, or is that going to scar them almost?
Feels like we're Feels like we're on the start of a liquid curve.
Yeah.
Will they get over the line?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, with the way it's going, W7M second place in 2023 ends up winning it 2024 phase.
Yeah, sounds a bit.
BDS is next year when we go to France.
It would be perfect.
Kind of poetic with the French core as well. Yeah, okay. I think this is where we'll end it. So it's a nice recap. Is there any big things that you learned from SI? As one last thing. Anything that stood out to you just as a general thing?
Don't underestimate anybody.
I think that's fair enough to say. Okay, I think we'll end it there. Thank you very much for giving me your thoughts and insights, Titan. Thank you all at home for watching. You seem to absolutely love these podcasts, and I absolutely love making them. I'll make them absolutely anyway. As you can see, we are literally in an airport lounge. We are sat in Krakow Airport waiting to both fly home. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you all again on the next one.